David Wilcock, and let's see, we've got all kinds of things happening in the background here, very interesting stuff. David, are you still with us?
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so I've got my questions out to our secret witness in the background here, and I've also got another, as I said earlier, another person kind of feeding me information who, as I said, has a special forces background. Mm-hmm. It looks like he's saying that I'm asking if those pyramids are holograms, and he's saying that there are waves coming off the corners of the pyramids, and it sounds like the power is increased, he says, or decreased to each corner to move the vehicle in a certain direction. These are like heat waves that cause mirages in the desert, so on. He has a scientific background. Let's see. I'm still waiting for our other witness to come forward with some answers here. One thing, it looks like they're actually being very cautious, afraid to come out and say exactly what the blue beam is, and I think they do know something about it.
Well, yeah, I had one witness who's fairly well-established credibility with me and said in no uncertain terms this was blue beam.
Yeah, and this person is saying that, alluding to the fact that it may be scalar. So that means that both my kind of secret sources here are kind of in agreement with how they're terming what may be creating the blue beam.
Oh, but yeah. If you're going to create a gigantic hologram, I think scalar would be the only way to do it, because you need, you run into the problem with electromagnetic fields that they dissipate so quickly. The inverse square law, the farther you go away, you start losing power by the square of the distance. So scalar, on the other hand, you actually don't pass through space at all. It only appears at the location that you aim it at. So you don't lose all that power as you're zapping it through the atmosphere.
Okay, but what is occurring to me is that it does appear that they're opening what I would think of as possibly a stargate or a wormhole. It's possible that, in other words, it could be a weapon, but they still can be opening, basically a stargate or a wormhole, and they may be letting something in. Maybe there's a reason for doing that.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, you bring up something, you're triggering my memory banks, because way back in the day when Daniel was the main source that I had, this is the guy who allegedly worked on a project called Phoenix 3 at Montauk Point, Long Island, that was apparently some kind of, I'm sorry, somebody just sent me a text, and I can't chew gum and talk at the same time. Somebody says, seems like you're right about the beam coming from HARP. Yeah, so he's basically just confirming that it's HARP. I don't know how he got my information at all. Did you send him to me?
No, I haven't sent you anybody. I don't know who's trying to contact you.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody could have actually found me, because I'm under an alias.
Okay, we can't necessarily take their word on that, I have to say.
Right. I lost my train of thought, but the point that I was
saying that Daniel, that I was triggering some thoughts in you in regards to the fact.
Oh yeah, Daniel. Thank you for reminding me, because you were talking about a Stargate. That's exactly where I was going. Daniel, back in the day, was talking about a television show that was actually a disclosure of something real. The television show was called Time Tunnel, and he actually had a photograph that he took from inside one of the facilities of something that he called a TVG, and he says, David, what does TVG stand for? And I just blurted out time vector generator, and he says, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. But that's exactly what it was. It was time vector generator, and it was a device that basically creates a spiral, just like the one you see in the sky in this in Norway, except that it does it through, it's this big giant thing that looks like a giant alpine horn, basically. And it's got a spiral going in. There's like a black spiral and a white spiral, and they kind of blend together going towards the center. And he had a photograph of this thing, inside a facility that he showed me. He said it was very sensitive. We could have been killed for even looking at it, et cetera, the typical stuff they say. I do not have a copy of this thing. He only showed it to me on a computer. But it was a very compelling photograph. And it definitely looked like it was a real device, some kind of technology. And of course, they made the show time tunnel to cover up for it. But again, the point was that this technology of creating the spiral, according to what Daniel was saying, is what you need to do in order to be able to get what Henry Deacon was calling a rift to occur, to create an aperture, basically, for either something to come in or something to get out, one or the other. So, yeah, this could actually be some kind of technology for that purpose. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. Well, that's what it seems to me is going on there. But I would love to hear from this other witness, if I can, in the background here. Not sure if they're being asked to be quiet. They've got all sorts of things going on. So I don't know. I have to say that we're at a very weird juncture right now, and the fact that they want to talk about this being a Russian rocket, the fact that I think that's really fascinating. At first, the statement from Russia was, no, it's not. And then, obviously, someone got to them, and then they had to reverse their story. Actually sounds a little like Roswell.
Yeah, doesn't it? This is so, it's got swamp gas written all over it. It's right back to the same old J. Allen Hynek kind of crap.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. I don't know what that's all about. I do know that what you were talking about with the spirals is really interesting. And, I don't know, but this is very bizarre. You and I looked at a series of photographs at one time together, and they came from a secret witness, and there was some interlocking spirals in, I believe, one of those photographs.
Oh, yeah, I know. Now I know what you're talking about, yeah.
So I'm just thinking... Those
were generated by consciousness, though. Those were not generated by a machine, per se.
Right, but think about that. If we're talking about time travel or travel to other dimensions through a wormhole or Stargate, then what the technology is, regardless of who creates it, in other words, whether you use a machine to do it or use your mind, you're going to have to create the same thing. In other words, it's an opening. And it's
you remember Richard's phrase about torsion fields, rotation, rotation, rotation. The whole daggone thing is based on rotation, because when you rotate any material in our own space-time, you're also rotating the etheric or the torsion field. And when you rotate the torsion field, that's how you start to get a bleed-through happening between those the time-space and the space-time, and that's when you can get into time travel and bleed-throughs and all kinds of exotic phenomena that we would call high strangeness or weird science and frickin' magic, the WSFM that Greer's talking about. That's what they actually call it. They call it WSFM.
Weird
science and frickin' magic.
And frickin' magic. Okay.
Yeah, there's actually, he said there was a WSFM desk in the CIA specifically for that stuff.
Wonderful. Yeah, well, yeah, right. I can tell you who mans it, too, or who did. But we won't go there at the moment. Actually, there's also counter-rotating spirals, right? So